Imagine a type of fat inside your body that you just cannot see.
Right.
You cannot pinch it. I mean, you could be looking in the mirror right now, feeling pretty good about your reflection, and be completely unaware that this fat is just sitting deep inside of you.
Yeah, it's a completely hidden threat.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And it's acting like this toxic hidden organ, like it is literally pumping inflammatory chemicals into your system 24 hours a day.
It's a deeply unsettling reality to confront, honestly.
Yeah.
We are historically so conditioned to view body fat simply as, extra padding or just stored energy.
Just a little extra weight.
Exactly. But this specific type of fat behaves entirely differently. It is essentially a rogue gland.
A rogue gland. Wow.
Yeah, it just sets up shop next to your vital organs and starts actively interfering with how your body operates.
And that terrifying image is the exact reason we are doing this today.
It's so important.
Our mission for this deep dive is to give you, specifically, as someone who might, be hearing about this for the very first time, a complete, actionable beginner's guide to safely understanding and eliminating visceral fat.
Safely being the key word there.
Yes. No fad diets, no extreme fitness routines that will break your joints, and definitely no questionable social media advice.
Which is everywhere right now.
Oh.
But we are grounding everything in rigorous clinical data today.
Only the real science.
Right. We're pulling directly from a massive stack of guidelines and studies. We've got the Mayo Clinic, Harvard Health, the CDC, the NHS, and leading registered dietitians.
It's a huge stack of research.
It really is. And the goal here is to give you the biological reality, completely stripped of the hype.
Okay, let's unpack this. Before we can safely start losing this fat, we really have to understand the biological enemy we are actually fighting.
We do.
Because the first thing I realized, looking at these sources, is that not all fat is created equal.
Far from it. I mean, in clinical practice, we maintain a very clear diagnostic distinction between two main types of fat.
Okay.
First, you have subcutaneous fat. That is the soft, pinchable layer located directly under your skin.
So if you poke your belly and it jiggles or it just feels soft, that's subcutaneous.
Exactly. And while it might, bother some people aesthetically, biologically speaking, it is relatively benign.
Really?
Yeah, it just sits there. It stores energy without really causing severe systemic dysfunction.
So subcutaneous fat is kind of like wearing a heavy winter coat.
That's a good way to look at it.
It might make you feel a bit bulky, but it's just a layer sitting harmlessly on the outside.
Right. But then there's the other kind.
The scary kind.
Visceral adipose tissue. Visceral fat.
And this one is different.
Very different. This fat does not sit under the skin. It is stored deep within the abdominal cavity, like physically behind the firm muscular wall of your stomach.
It's actually behind the abs.
Yes. It intimately wraps itself around your major internal organs.
Oh.
Your liver, your pancreas, your intestines.
And because it's wrapped right around those organs, I'm assuming it has direct access to them.
That direct access is exactly what makes it so dangerous. Visceral fat has a highly developed blood supply, and its location means it drains directly into what is called the portal circulation.
The portal circulation. What is that exactly?
You can think of it as a direct, high-speed VIP highway straight into your liver.
So instead of just sitting there like the winter coat we talked about, it's actively dumping things onto that highway.
Constantly. It releases a continuous stream of free fatty acids and inflammatory chemicals directly into liver.
And the liver just has to deal with it.
Well, it tries. But when your liver is bombarded by these chemicals, it struggles to clear insulin from your bloodstream.
Which leads to problems.
Big problems. When insulin levels stay high, your cells stop responding to it. And that's insulin resistance. It also causes your liver to pump out unhealthy plaque-building fats right into your bloodstream. And it even produces a hormone precursor that severely constricts your blood vessels.
Oh, which drives up your blood pressure.
Exactly.
So to build on that winter coat analogy, visceral fat is basically like having a dangerous stowaway hiding inside your body.
Yes, that's a perfect image.
It is sneaked into the engine room, and it is secretly cutting the wires of your metabolic engine.
That perfectly captures the biological mechanism. The stowaway is actively sabotaging you.
Unbelievable.
And the clinical stakes are incredibly high here. Epidemiological research has clearly established that carrying this deep belly fat is a powerful, independent risk factor for serious chronic conditions.
Even for people who appear healthy on the outside.
Yes, even for people who appear completely otherwise healthy.
The numbers in the clinical data genuinely stop me in my tracks. Like, let's look at cognitive decline first.
Yeah, that one is startling. We have longitudinal data from Kaiser Permanente tracking this over decades.
What did they find?
They found that individuals in their early 40s who exhibited the highest levels of this deep abdominal fat were nearly 3 times more likely to develop dementia,
3 times.
including Alzheimer's disease, by the time they reach their 70s.
A 3-fold increase just based on where your body decided to store fat? That is terrifying.
It is. And the researchers noted that this positive correlation was completely absent when looking at peripheral fat.
Like the subcutaneous fat.
Right, like the fat around your thighs or under the skin. The cognitive danger was specifically tied to the stowaway in the deep abdomen.
But it doesn't stop at the brain either. The sources point to massive respiratory risks too.
Yeah, there was a large cohort study focusing on female teachers in California. They found that those with high levels of visceral fat experienced a 37% higher incidence of asthma compared to those with smaller waistlines.
Wait, asthma. How does belly fat cause asthma?
The inflammatory chemicals dumped by the fat literally drive chronic inflammation in the airways.
It's all connected.
It really is. Add to that a 3-fold increase in the risk of developing precancerous polyps in the colon,
Jeez.
alongside severely elevated risks for cardiovascular disease.
Okay, so the threat is immense, and it's completely invisible from the outside, which leads to a huge practical hurdle for a beginner.
How to measure it?
Exactly. If it's hiding behind my abdominal muscles, how do I even know it's there? I can't feel it. I mean, I can't just step on my bathroom scale, can I?
No, definitely not.
What about the body mass index, the BMI? We've been using that for decades.
You absolutely cannot rely on a standard scale or the BMI.
Really? Why not?
Those tools have severe diagnostic limitations when it comes to visceral fat. The BMI is calculated purely from your total body weight and your height.
Right.
It completely ignores what that weight is actually made of.
Right.
It doesn't factor in your bone density, it doesn't account for lean muscle mass, and crucially...
That has no idea where the fat is.
Exactly. It has no idea where the fat is distributed on your body.
So if I understand this, a weightlifter could step on a scale, register as technically obese on a BMI chart because, muscle is incredibly dense and heavy,
Right.
but actually have 0 visceral fat.
They often do. And the inverse is actually much more common and much more dangerous. We call it metabolically obese normal weight.
Metabolically obese, but normal weight. That sounds contradictory.
It does, but it happens when an individual lives a very sedentary lifestyle, but naturally has a slight build.
Okay.
They stepped on the scale, their BMI is perfectly within the normal range, so they just assume they are healthy.
Because the numbers look fine.
Right. Meanwhile, they're carrying life-threatening levels of hidden visceral fat wrapped around their liver and pancreas.
The stowaway is completely undetected.
Completely undetected by the scale.
So if the scale is lying to us, and we obviously don't want to spend thousands of dollars getting a medical-grade MRI or, a radiation-heavy CT scan, what is the at-home assessment?
Public health agencies globally, including the NHS, NICE, and Harvard Health, they rely on proxy measurements.
Okay, what do we need?
You just need a standard, inexpensive tape measure. The primary tool is measuring your waist circumference, but you really have to do it correctly.
Right, because most people just measure where the waistband of their jeans sits, which is usually way too low, like resting on the hips.
Exactly. To get an accurate visceral fat proxy, you need to stand up, place the tape measure directly against your bare stomach, and find the midpoint between the bottom of your lowest rib and the top of your hip bone.
Okay, that sounds a bit complicated. Where is that exactly?
For the vast majority of people, this is right around the level of your navel.
Right at the belly button. Got it. And here's the hardest part for human psychology, right? You have to relax. You cannot suck your stomach in.
You really can't. You need to take a normal breath and measure at the end of the exhale.
The end of the exhale.
Yeah. Keep the tape snug, but don't let it compress the skin.
And what are the numbers we're looking out for?
The clinical thresholds are very clear. For men, a waist measurement greater than 40 inches or 102 centimeters signals a high risk. Okay, 40 inches for men.
For women, the high-risk threshold is anything over 35 inches or 88 centimeters.
Now, the sources also highlight another metric that seems a bit more customized to the individual, the waist-to-height ratio.
Ah, yes. The WHTR is excellent because it keeps the risk assessment proportional to your specific skeletal frame.
Which makes sense.
The math is incredibly straightforward. Your waist measurement should simply be less than half of your total height.
Let me do the math. So if you are 6 feet tall...
Which is 72 inches.
Right, 72 inches. So your waist needs to be under 36 inches.
Precisely. If your ratio hits zero point 0.5 or above, that is the clinical signal for elevated metabolic risk.
Okay.
This raises an important question. Once a listener does this measurement tonight, and they realize their ratio is over zero point 0.5, what do you think is the immediate psychological reaction?
Oh, panic. Complete panic. And the very next thing they do is look for a shortcut, like a rapid fix to just undo the problem by the weekend.
Which is the fastest way to hit a biological dead end. The shortcuts for visceral fat simply do not work. Let's tackle the most aggressive shortcut people imagine. Surgery.
Okay.
Because if this fat is a toxic organ and it's killing us, why not just go to a cosmetic surgeon, pay the money, and have it vacuumed out? Liposuction is literally one of the most common procedures in the world.
It is. But think back to the anatomy we discussed earlier. Where is the visceral fat actually located?
Behind the muscle wall.
Exactly. It lies deep inside the body, behind the thick, firm, muscular wall of the abdomen. Cosmetic interventions like liposuction are strictly surface-level procedures.
Oh, I see.
A surgeon's scalpel or suction tube physically cannot pass through the abdominal muscles to reach the internal organs.
So they are only vacuuming up the winter coat, the subcutaneous fat.
They're removing the harmless fat.
Wow.
You could undergo a painful, extremely expensive liposuction procedure, wake up with a visibly flatter stomach, and still have the exact same elevated risk for a heart attack, dementia, or diabetes.
Because the visceral fat remains completely untouched.
Completely untouched.
Okay, so surgery is impossible. What about the gym?
All right, let's talk about it.
Let me push back on the exercise side, because every single infomercial tells me that if I buy their ab roller or do 100 crunches every morning, I will melt the belly fat.
Spot reduction is one of the most persistent, frustrating myths in human physiology.
It doesn't work.
Clinical research has repeatedly demonstrated that doing localized muscle contractions like sit-ups, crunches, or planks does absolutely nothing to trigger fat loss in the specific tissue resting directly on top of those muscles.
So your ab muscles don't just reach up and eat the fat right above them for energy.
They don't. Your body draws energy systemically. Building a strong muscular core is fantastic for your spinal health and your posture, but it will never clear the fat out of your liver.
Because it's a whole body process.
Yes. The visceral fat is reduced through systemic energy expenditure, meaning whole body metabolic changes.
But there is a massive silver lining in the clinical data regarding this fat, isn't there?
There really is. The best news of this entire deep dive is that visceral fat is highly vascular.
Meaning it has a lot of blood flow.
Exactly. Because it has such a rich blood supply and is so metabolically active, it is highly sensitive to lifestyle changes.
Okay, so it reacts quickly.
When you finally create the right metabolic environment, visceral fat is usually the very first fat your body burns away. It wants to be utilized.
So we just have to figure out how to give the body the right instructions.
Precisely.
And that battle begins on our plates.
But again, our mission today is safety for a beginner. Because the second someone decides to diet, they usually just try to starve themselves.
Which makes the visceral fat problem exponentially worse.
Really? Starving makes it worse.
Oh, absolutely. Nutritional interventions have to focus on long-term cellular change, not immediate scale drops. Now, to force the body to use stored fat for fuel, you do need a continuous energy deficit.
You must consume fewer calories than you burn.
Yes. But extreme crash diets are disastrous.
The clinical guidelines specifically warn against dropping below 1,200 calories a day for women or 1,400 calories a day for men.
That's right. What actually happens inside the body when you cut calories that aggressively?
Your body essentially thinks it has entered a famine. To ensure your survival, it radically alters your metabolism. Your thyroid dials down its activity.
What's trying to save energy?
Exactly. Your body subconsciously stops making small, calorie-burning movements throughout the day, something we call non-exercise activity thermogenesis.
Like fidgeting and stuff.
Right. And worst of all, it begins breaking down your lean muscle tissue for immediate energy.
So you are literally destroying the very muscle that helps keep your metabolism running fast.
Yes. And here is the truly tragic part for anyone fighting belly fat. When you inevitably break that extreme crash diet because you are exhausted and starving,
Which always happens.
and you start eating normally again, your body violently regains the weight.
Oh, no.
But because your metabolism is now slower and your muscle is gone, an even higher percentage of that regained weight is stored as visceral fat.
So by starving yourself, you're basically training your body to aggressively hoard the stowaway.
Safe and permanent loss requires a modest, honestly kind of boring, but highly effective daily deficit of just 250 to 500 calories.
That doesn't sound too bad.
It creates a steady reduction of a half pound to a pound a week without triggering that famine response.
Here's where it gets really interesting, because the sources make it clear that it's not just about math.
No, it's not.
It's not just calories in, calories out. There are specific supernutrients that actively disarm visceral fat.
Yes, and the absolute powerhouse here is soluble fiber.
Soluble fiber.
Soluble fiber is unique because of how it physically behaves inside your gastrointestinal tract. Unlike roughage, soluble fiber absorbs water and turns into this thick, gel-like substance in your gut.
And what does a gel in your gut do to visceral fat?
It acts as a massive speed bump for digestion. It slows down how fast food empties from your stomach, but more importantly, it drastically slows the absorption of carbohydrates into your bloodstream.
Okay, so it paces everything out.
By slowing that down, it prevents massive spikes in blood glucose.
Oh, and if glucose doesn't spike, then the pancreas doesn't have to panic and dump a massive load of insulin into the blood.
You got it. And since insulin is the primary hormone that instructs your body to store fat in the deep abdomen, blunting those insulin spikes is how you cut off the stowaway's supply line.
That makes perfect sense.
The American Journal of Clinical Nutrition published an incredible finding on this. They found that for every 10-gram increase in daily soluble fiber, visceral fat accumulation decreased by 3.7% over a 5-year period.
Just by adding 10 grams of the gel-forming fiber, that's amazing.
It really is.
We're talking about what? Eating steel-cut oats for breakfast, or adding black beans or lentils to a salad, maybe roasting some Brussels sprouts?
Exactly. It's highly accessible. But fiber needs a partner.
Okay, what's the partner?
If you are in a caloric deficit, you must protect your metabolic engine, your skeletal muscle. The clinical guidelines recommend maintaining a daily intake of 1.2 to 2.0 grams of protein per kilogram of body weight.
To keep the muscle safe.
High protein intake preserves your muscle tissue, and it stimulates powerful satiety hormones that naturally turn down your appetite.
Now, there was one more nutritional element in the stack of research that felt almost like science fiction to me: the gut microbiome.
Oh, the bacteria living in your digestive tract have a profound influence on your metabolic health.
Tell me about this study.
The sources highlighted a fascinating 90-day clinical trial. They took overweight participants and simply had them supplement their diet with prebiotics and probiotics.
And what happened?
Over those 90 days, those participants experienced a 35% reduction in visceral fat.
A 35% reduction in the toxic fat. And the
Yeah.
craziest part of that study,
Tell them.
their overall body weight didn't even change.
Exactly.
The probiotics didn't cause massive weight loss. They caused a massive shift, right? Signaling the body to break down the dangerous visceral fat specifically.
Remarkable.
So adding fermented foods like Greek yogurt, kefir, kimchi, sauerkraut, that's practically a biological cheat code.
It fortifies the gut barrier and drastically reduces the systemic inflammation that visceral fat actually feeds on. So your nutritional blueprint is clear.
Let's summarize it.
A safe 250 to 500 calorie deficit, heavily prioritize soluble fiber, hit your protein goals, and feed the gut bacteria.
Okay, so the diet cuts off the supply lines. It stops new fat from forming. But to actually burn away the stowaway that is already there, we have to start moving.
We do. But again, the type of movement matters immensely.
Wait, hold on. We just spent all this time talking about how muscle is the metabolic engine.
True.
If building muscle burns more calories around the clock, shouldn't a beginner just go straight to the weight room and lift heavy things? Why even bother with cardio?
That's a common assumption. But it comes down to the unique cellular biology of visceral fat. If you looked at a visceral fat cell under a microscope, you would see that its surface is covered in an extremely high density of what are called beta-adrenergic receptors.
Beta-adrenergic receptors, what do those do?
Think of them like chemical locks on the surface of the fat cell. These specific locks only open when they come into contact with adrenaline and noradrenaline.
Oh, okay.
Visceral fat is exquisitely sensitive to these adrenaline-like hormones.
And what triggers the body to release a sustained wave of adrenaline?
Sustained aerobic activity, cardio.
Ah, I see.
When you get your heart rate up and keep it elevated for an extended period, your nervous system floods your bloodstream with these catecholamines. The beta-adrenergic receptors on the visceral fat pull those hormones in, the locks open, and the cell is forced to release its stored fat to be burned as energy.
So lifting weights is great, but it doesn't create that same sustained flood of adrenaline to pick the
A
locks.
major clinical trial at Duke University proved this decisively.
Or did they?
They compared different exercise modalities
Mm.
and found that aerobic training like sustained jogging, brisk walking, swimming burned 67% more calories than resistance training alone.
Wow. 67%.
And it was vastly, significantly superior at clearing the toxic visceral fat out of the liver.
That is a staggering difference. So cardio is the primary weapon here. What is the actual prescription?
The public health consensus across the board is a minimum of 150 minutes of moderate intensity aerobic exercise per week.
So that breaks down to roughly 30 minutes, 5 days a week.
Exactly. And you pair that with 2 days of full body strength training to preserve your muscle mass.
Let's be real for a second, though.
Okay.
For a complete beginner, someone who hasn't worked out since high school, telling them to do 150 minutes of cardio sounds like climbing Mount Everest.
It can be very intimidating.
We can't just expect them to lace up shoes and run for 30 minutes straight tomorrow. They'll destroy their knees or just quit by Wednesday.
And that is exactly why the NHS strongly recommends a structured transition program. They specifically highlight the Couch to 5K protocol.
Oh, I've heard of that.
It is a 9-week program designed for absolute beginners. You don't start by running. You start by walking briskly and then interspersing very short 60-second intervals of light jogging.
So it gives the joints, the ligaments, and the heart time to adapt safely without overwhelming the system.
Precisely. It builds the aerobic base required to eventually sustain that adrenaline release we need for the visceral fat receptors.
Okay, I want to pose a frustrating scenario.
Let's hear it.
Imagine a listener takes all this to heart. They are eating their oats for the soluble fiber. They are in a 300-calorie deficit. They are doing their couch to 5K walk jogs.
Doing everything right.
Right. But 4 weeks go by, they take out the tape measure, they find their navel, they exhale, and the number hasn't budged a single millimeter. What is happening?
If we connect this to the bigger picture, we have to look outside the kitchen and the gym.
Where do we look?
We have to look at the invisible saboteurs of the neuroendocrine system.
Uh-huh.
Chronic stress and sleep deprivation.
How does stress literally stop fat loss?
It comes down to a pathway in the brain called the HPA axis, which is essentially your body's central alarm system. When you are under chronic psychological stress, financial worries, a terrible boss, endless emails, that alarm system stays locked in the on position, flooding your body with the stress hormone cortisol.
We hear about cortisol a lot, but how does it interact with the stowaway?
In the worst way possible. Remember those receptors on the fat cells we talked about earlier?
The adrenaline locks.
Yes. Well, visceral fat cells don't just have receptors for adrenaline, they also express a 4-fold higher density of receptors for cortisol compared to normal subcutaneous fat.
Wait, 4 times the receptors?
4 times.
So they're biologically designed as magnets for stress hormones.
Yes. When cortisol levels remain chronically elevated, it activates an enzyme within the visceral fat that aggressively promotes fat storage.
Unbelievable.
Chronic stress essentially rewires your body to pull circulating fats out of the bloodstream and pack them exclusively into your deep abdomen.
And the other major saboteur disrupting the hormones is a lack of sleep, right?
The epidemiological data here is frighteningly clear. Adults who routinely sleep 5 hours or less per night accumulate significantly more visceral fat than those who get 7 to 9 hours.
Wow.
Severe sleep deprivation not only spikes cortisol, but it also heavily disrupts the hormones that control your hunger ghrelin and leptin.
Which makes you crave dense carbohydrates.
Exactly.
You know, I always think of this like a laptop computer.
How so?
When a computer's battery drops to 5%, what does it do? It dims the screen, turns off background apps, and goes into a critical save state to preserve power.
That's a great analogy.
When you are constantly stressed to the breaking point and you are surviving on 5 hours of sleep, your brain literally interprets that as an environment of severe danger and famine. You are in a biological save state.
Yes, your brain thinks it's an emergency.
So what does the body do? It hoards its most energy-dense fuel, visceral fat, and packs it right next to the vital organs just to keep you alive.
That is the evolutionary reality. Your body thinks it is saving you from a famine that doesn't actually exist.
So how do we turn it off?
To get the body to finally release the visceral fat, you have to convince your brain that it is safe.
Convince it that it's safe.
That means ruthlessly prioritizing 7 to 9 hours of continuous sleep and actively lowering your daily cortisol through stress management, whether that is deep breathing, disconnecting from screens, or just taking quiet walks in nature.
So what does this all mean? We've covered an incredible amount of human biology today.
It means that eliminating visceral fat is not a cosmetic endeavor. You cannot surgically remove it, and you cannot spot reduce it with endless sit-ups.
Right?
It is a slow, methodical, and profoundly rewarding process of metabolic repair. You achieve it by using soluble fiber to act as a barrier against insulin spikes, engaging in sustained aerobic cardio to pick the beta-adrenergic locks on the fat cells, and managing your stress to turn off the cortisol alarm system.
It's entirely about consistency over intensity. And I want to leave you with a final thought to mull over today as you go about your week.
It's an important one.
We've established clinically that visceral fat acts less like a passive storage unit and more like a hyperactive rogue organ. So instead of thinking of this journey as simply trying to lose weight, what if you completely shifted your mindset?
Exactly.
What if you conceptualize this as taming a toxic gland inside your body? How might treating your fat as a living, breathing organ change the way you respect your sleep schedule, your stress levels, and your daily walk?
It shifts the entire paradigm. You are no longer trying to look different in a mirror. You are actively healing your internal ecosystem.
Remember, that stowaway is hiding inside right now, secretly cutting the wires. But now you have the exact biological blueprint to safely evict it. Start with the tape measure, start with the fiber. We'll see you on the next deep dive.